There's a new kind of pressure building along the U.S.-Mexican border. And it's not just about migration anymore. It's about power. Because for years, the conversation around Mexico's cartel crisis has lived in two separate worlds. In Mexico, it's a fight for sovereignty, security, and survival. In the United States, it's a growing national security threat tied to fentanyl, trafficking networks, and a border that feels increasingly out of control. Now those two worlds are colliding head-on. President Donald Trump has ramped up pressure on the Mexican government in ways we haven't seen before, publicly and politically. He's pushed the idea that Mexico isn't doing enough to dismantle cartel networks, groups that, at this point, operate like multinational corporations with armies attached. We're talking about organizations responsible for moving tens of billions of dollars in narcotics every year, with fentanyl alone now driving the deadliest drug crisis in American history, killing over 70,000 Americans annually. Trump has floated aggressive measures, from labeling cartels as foreign terrorist organizations to expanding cross-border enforcement strategies, even hinting at unilateral action if Mexico fails to get control of the situation. That's where things get complicated, because from Mexico's perspective, this isn't just policy, it's sovereignty. Any suggestion of U.S. military involvement, direct or indirect, crosses a line that is historically sensitive and politically explosive. So what happens when external pressure meets internal fragility? Does it force real change, or does it destabilize an already delicate balance? Here's the deeper, more important question. Can the United States demand results without confronting its own role in fueling the demand, the money, and the weapons that keep this system alive? This isn't just a diplomatic standoff. It's a high-stakes negotiation between two nations tied together by geography, economics, and shared problems neither one can solve alone. Today, we're breaking down the pressure, the politics, and the reality behind the headlines, because what happens next won't just shape U.S.-Mexican relations. It could redefine what this fight against cartel power actually looks like.
Welcome to the Retrospect podcast, a show where people come together from different walks of life and discuss a topic from their generation's perspective. My name is Ian, and as always, I'm joined by Stoney.
Hello.
And Jason.
Hello, everyone.
How's everyone doing?
Well, I'm feeling a whole lot better than I did last week.
Well, I think I got what you had a little bit. I'm a little congested, not too bad.
I'm gonna tell you, when we were recording Thursday,
yeah,
I was feeling bad. I've been feeling bad all day long.
Yeah.
I almost had gone home from work. Well, Friday morning was bad, and I had to stay home from work.
Really?
Did you wind up going to the doctor at least?
No, I never went to the doctor. I took some medicine, and just kind of waited it out, and luckily by Sunday I kind of turned the corner and had gotten better. But unfortunately now Tracy is down with it, and she's come to find out, according to the results, because she did go to the doctor and get tested, and it came back, I believe, if I recall right, I think it showed coronavirus 43.
What the heck is that?
It's in the same family of COVID-19, it's just number 43.
Okay.
So, but yeah,
there must be something going around, because I was outside. I ran a show, like I did a bunch of sound for bands and a whole St. Patrick's Day parade. They had like a whole big thing out in a big community event, and so I was with a few bands as they did like a little outside venue for this celebration. It was on Saturday, and so I was around a bunch of people. It was an all-day event, as you can imagine. So I was there from sunup to sundown. And Sunday I was fine. Monday I started feeling a little under the weather, and then like Tuesday, Wednesday was when I felt like the worst. And I think now I'm on the other side of it now, where I feel better, but it was just this weird.
So corona is just a common cold.
Correct.
It's just one of the variants of the common cold.
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha.
That's it. That's from what I understand. What the one virus they have been unable to deal with. It kind of reminds me of an old story where I remember in high school reading a story regarding the world that's kind of it's like put in the future and and they've wiped out all the diseases except the common cold, and somebody sneezes and it's like it's like they fly off into panic, so. It makes you feel very, just clogged up completely.
Yes.
Couldn't breathe, can't sleep.
Those 2 days I was talking about, I definitely had some NyQuil handy to help me kind of symptom relief and also to help go to sleep a little bit.
Good old NyQuil,
it helped me out.
Kind of
I had a very busy week too, so it was. But anyways, all in all, even though I feel like this, I had a great time this weekend, and it was a lot of fun to, be out around music and around a bunch of people having a fun time. So it was pretty good. Cool. So
I missed the parade.
They also had I think they had a run or something. It was
they did.
Really
They've
cool.
been doing it. I actually participated in the very first one.
Okay.
And I haven't done it since. It's just it just hadn't worked
I
out.
definitely thought about you. As they said
I did it.
They said to go, and I was like, look at all these people running.
Yeah, it's
I was like,
it's gotten pretty big now. There's some people that complain that they shouldn't be doing that because it closes the streets a lot earlier than what they would like, and people are just on and on.
People just need to shut up.
It was a Saturday. Just go.
Yeah, it's
come have fun.
Yeah, but I
people are always going to complain.
Of course,
it was a beautiful day.
It was. Don't get me wrong.
Great week.
Don't get me wrong. I loved it. The only thing was, it was around 2:00 is when the sun peeked out from behind the building that was giving us shade, and it was from 2 to 5, I think.
You got warm.
I was cooking. I tell you what, my head looks good now, but Sunday and Monday, people were like, "Oh, you got a little sun," and I was like, "Yes, I did."
Yeah.
I cooked a little bit. So it had a little tan line where my watch is. I used to always wear a watch, and again, it's gotten better now. But I got rosy, so it was a beautiful day though. It was very breezy and very cool, and so
just so everybody can understand, what do you call it behind the
curtain?
Behind the curtain, Ian is white as a sheet of paper.
Yeah. I'm as Irish as it gets, and so it was.
I'm not far from that.
So
St. Patty.
Yeah, but anyways, so
St. Patrick.
It was a fun week. So
very interesting guy.
But if I sound a little congested, please pardon me for.
You need to check and see if you got Corona 43,
whatever it is.
Yeah, whatever that number was. If I remember reading it right off of Tracy's results, but
cool.
Yeah. It's bad. I don't know where we picked it up. I either picked it up at the gala that her and I went to, or we picked it up in Aruba. But
well, I don't know.
Or traveling back and forth.
It could, it could be anywhere. It's so funny. Every time
I have an exotic cold. Is that what I'm saying?
You have an exotic cold. As long as it's not Captain Trips, then you're okay. And it's so funny because I'm watching the series The Stand right now.
Okay.
Oh, that was a great book.
Oh, that was a great book. Did y'all haven't discussed that movie?
No.
Any of Stephen King's
I think
stuff?
I've seen it, but I've
none of Stephen King stuff.
Yes, we've done. What's the one? Here's Johnny.
The Shining.
The Shining.
The Shining.
Oh yeah, that's a classic.
But you said it's a series.
Yeah,
because the original was a mini series. What is it? 2 or 3 nights?
No, that was there's been some iterations. Of course, there was the original 1979, which is the classic.
Right.
Then they came out, I think, in 2004 with a mini series, which with Rob Lowe.
It was actually pretty good.
Which was really good.
It was really good.
I really enjoyed it. Now, of course, the ending of that was a little different from how the book ended. But, so they took some creative differences with it. But and then they've just come out with another one, I think, within the last year or so. And then there was an actual series on Paramount that it was only one season, called the Stand.
See, this is what I know. We have a topic, and I want to get to it because it's pressing today. But Hollywood is really running out of ideas.
Yeah, they are.
There's no creativity left.
Yeah,
and when they redid Dune. I'm like, why? Now I think they got a series on Dune. Why? What? You got nothing?
They're trying to milk it for all the money they can.
You got nothing? You know, when they make a movie like True Grit and they remade it with John Wayne, why would you do that?
Well, that's unfortunately. I think I think Hollywood has got major issues, and I watched some I've watched some things regarding what's going on with the quality of movies and what's happened, and I hate to say it, but there was if I remember the conversation that I heard, because they interviewed some ex-writers and people that were in the industry, and unfortunately there was a shift in the type of people they brought in
Yes.
to write stories. And unfortunately, you know, I hate to bring up the old DEI stuff, but unfortunately you brought in probably people that really did not have very much talent when it came to this stuff, and the quality of movies are now what you're seeing is a result of those policies.
It's to push an agenda.
Agendas,
and you can really see that in like series, because the series starts off great with characters, but then there's this line that you can actually see in a series where the actors' money goes up and they got to save money, so they do less in the writing industry. But, you know, it's beyond that, too. That's a great, and you can see that. But, like, it really ticked me off when James Cameron won all of these awards for turning people blue.
Right.
The same story, Avatar, Dances with Wolves, Pocahontas, The Last Samurai. It's the same exact story. All he did was turn these people blue and won. Oh my God, he's the greatest.
It's the graphics. That's what people went to see the movie because of the graphics.
It's the same story.
Oh, I know.
Right? It's exactly. You know,
that's the same thing.
The warrior.
The same thing can be said about Star Wars. Star Wars is the hero's tale, which is like a thing that's used. The same loop is used time and time and time again, and that's the fun of it. Sometimes is the fact you can tell the same story, but in your own way. But the problem now is that it feels like there's all that, and then there's also an agenda behind it, which makes it kind of feel a bit like disingenuous.
I don't think they really are writing movies with the same mindset they did back when I was young. Stoney was young. I just think that instead people have just gotten too political. Instead of just writing good stuff that tells a good story, they've just kind of abandoned that. Now, part of that is the industry has kind of wanted to do this. I don't, certain people have gotten in charge over there, and
they've have a platform now. They've gotten rid
of good people.
Oh,
and
I need to tell everybody what I think now. I have a platform.
I mean, look at Caroline Kennedy. I mean, you heard with Star Wars. I mean, you heard all that what's going on with George Lucas and just how they completely. I mean, from every critic, it's what they did to that story. To me, Star Wars should have, I thought, Timothy Zahn's Heir to the Empire is what should have followed Return of the Jedi.
I think you're gonna be riling up some people in the comments, but but you're great. You're right.
Yeah,
they did it to Star Trek too. Look, what is that? The Academy
turned out to be a disaster.
Every of the old casts of the Star Wars, not just the original Star Wars, but they said if you go this route, we'll never make another movie with y'all again.
Yeah,
because that Academy, the Starfleet Academy, is so bad and it's so woke. They're like, we're done.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It just like
leave it alone.
They just cannot seem to get out of their way, and I feel like that they just doubled down on this sort of this whatever they're trying to do. They think somehow they're being edgy, and I personally think they're trying to destroy these beloved, these franchises. I can't think of any other reason that they're they're wanting to do this.
They did the same thing. The same thing with the live action Snow White, with the lead actress like really putting her foot in her mouth a lot of times, and they were just like okay with that when it's like, and they really had tanked the performance of that movie. What I think. I don't know. It's crazy that they're just, but they also encourage that. So it's like
it's just not a lot of TV. There's not a lot of shows now that I have been thrilled that one of my favorite shows have popped back on to the new season started on Apple TV, which I think Apple TV's got some pretty good stuff right now. But Legacy of Monsters, Monarch. Godzilla, the Godzilla franchise.
Yeah. Oh man,
with Kirk Douglas, he's in it.
I love
Michael Douglas, or I forget which one, but
one of the Douglases.
He's in there, and they do it I thought they did a really good job with it. So
that's awesome.
I'm glad to see that some of this stuff is good, but some of my beloved sci-fi and fantasy type related shows have just been completely ruined with.
Yeah,
just eating up.
They did the same thing
with DEI stuff.
One of the biggest things that I love, not only for the books, literature, and the movies, and everything in between, is Lord of the Rings.
Oh,
that is my.
And they messed that up.
They destroyed it
with the Ring of Power. They messed that up real big for me.
That's like that's what I'm saying. I just do not get it. I just somehow whoever these people are sitting around the round table going. How they're not learning from this. So you know what? We need to at least go back to at least what Peter Jackson put out.
Oh yeah,
and use that as a guide.
Right.
And but who knows?
Well, it's like Game of Thrones. The King of the North, the zombie king. Did you know he was a Stark?
Nope.
That's all in the books.
Yeah,
but they never even addressed that. I learned really early on about movies, and I want to get on the subject, but I learned really early on, never read the book and then go watch the movie or series.
Because it'll ruin it for you.
It'll ruin it for you. Always watch it and then read it, because you go, ooh, look, that's even better.
Right.
And I learned that very early on in the 80s with a movie called The Keep. I read the book, and I loved the book. And it's a great little story set in World War II. The Germans take over this little European town, and they see this keep in the mountains. And they're like, okay, we're going to take that over. And in the process of taking it over, because the townspeople were just villagers, they didn't resist or anything. They took over this keep and realized that the big rocks were on the inside. The small rocks were on the outside. So it wasn't keeping anything out. It was keeping something in. It was just a great little story.
Yeah.
But I read the book and loved it. When I saw him making it, oh my God, I got to see. I saw it opening day. I was so effing mad.
Well,
I was just what they did to it just completely destroyed it.
Movies will very rarely ever. There's just not enough time to really capture the essence of what the book can do versus what they can put on film. So there's always going to be somewhat of a disappointment in the movie simply because there's a lot of information they can't include.
Yeah. I think that ought to be like a podcast on movies and people talking about movies, and movie life and stuff.
That's a good idea. There's a lot to talk about there. Yeah.
So what about
speaking a lot to talk about?
I mean, it's
this Mexican thing is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like I don't know. It's there for a while. It was in the news a lot, and I saw a bunch of news footage regarding the people, the war zones and the cartels were rebelling against.
They shut down some of the cruise ports.
Right. The government was was cracking down and. The president of Mexico has been criticized that she's pretty much owned by the cartels, which she probably is.
She is.
That's why she's protecting them. But I think she's being forced by Trump to actually go and do something about these cartels. And I'm going to tell you that the issue is I really think the fentanyl issue has really kind of changed the game. I think when it was cocaine and that those kind of drugs, right. I think it's different versus what fentanyl can do to people, and I think
Well, before it was other countries like Colombia and things like that. And because the U.S. shares a 2,000-mile border with Mexico, they were just kind of the transportation hub.
Right.
But Mexico and China are leading the world in fentanyl creation and manufacturing and everything else. And it's kind of crazy because they're making tons and tons of money on it. So when you're talking about this whole U.S.-Mexican relations, you're talking about trade, migration, energy, manufacturing, security, and organized crime. So it's not just one little thing. When you're looking at it, there was, what was it, almost $900 billion in trade with Mexico last year?
Yeah.
And you got to look at this, so, Trump's trying to get them, they keep talking sovereignty. Well, okay, your shit is coming in my country. And yes, we're providing the what do you call it? The demand part of it.
Yeah.
But you could be stopping it too.
I think back in the past, after the Spanish-American War, we had the opportunity to pretty much annex most of Mexico into the United States, and we didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Beginning to wonder, history, you can go back and probably the United States probably should have took, at that time, they had the option of taking Cuba and large parts of northern Mexico. Mm-hmm. And, I often wondered if America at that time, that's, right there at the turn by 1900, 1890s, how those countries and how those areas would have evolved differently if that would have become a U.S. protectorate. And in essence, the United States would extend down to, a good bit of northern Mexico.
Yeah, isn't it like halfway to Mexico City or something? It's a good swatch. Yeah.
It was a huge amount, and often wondered how that would have played out, historically. If that would have, I know definitely with Cuba, we wouldn't have had the problems we had later on.
Yeah.
That would have probably been a bustling tourism and everything else.
Well, it was at one time. You got to think about it. Until Castro took over, that was the number one place you went. That was all the gambling. That's where you went.
You know what city had the biggest involvement with Cuba?
What's that?
It was New Orleans.
Mm-hmm. Really?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
That was part of the mafia. That was the mafia ran the casinos.
More so than Miami. It was New Orleans.
New Orleans.
It hurt New Orleans when that fell to the communists.
Yes.
It really did. I mean, it.
When did that happen? What year was that?
Oh, God.
Bay of Pigs. You're talking about early 60s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, Carlos Marcella and all that. Yeah, they were heavily involved in the whole Cuban business. But it was a lot of trade. Matter of fact, at that time, for just on a local level, at that time, that Louisiana was floating the plan to build a mega airport between the cities of Baton Rouge and New Orleans.
Interesting.
To cater to the Latin American trade.
Interesting.
And so, unfortunately, none of that all kind of fell apart. But, I often wondered how, if that would have happened here, would, I think probably what Atlanta is today probably would have been what would have evolved in this area. So it's interesting how all that plays. How things work out. But yeah, just some issues right now.
The revolution first took place in 53 to 59, ending on January 1st, 1959.
Yeah.
Wow, the Bay of Pigs was after that,
right?
Because that's when the CIA, they were trying to take
get
them
it back.
out.
Okay,
yeah, and that was when they embarrassed JFK,
right?
And
the problems that ensued after that. So
see, that was the original casino. See, that's really really super before Las Vegas, and you had a little bit in Atlantic City, but it was really Cuba. That's where you went. You got the cigars, you got the mojitos, it was the place to go. And then when that revolution happened and then Russia got involved and the embargoes, we still have land on Cuba. We have a military base there.
Yeah, it's,
And it's-
I have a feeling that government's about to, I think, capitulate and get run
Cuba?
out. Yeah, they're getting ready to get run out of town.
Really?
Yeah, they're about pretty much. They have nothing. Their money supply. They're not getting subsidized. I mean, 20% of their. I know their budget was being subsidized by the Soviet Union.
Really?
That
Okay.
ended. So they don't. I mean, they're not now. Venezuela was there after that. After the Soviet Union would bust, then they turned to Venezuela. Now Venezuela's gone, so they're not even getting oil anymore.
No,
So
they have no electricity.
They-
They have nothing.
Yeah, they've been cut. They've been cut off.
All the cars there are like from the 50s.
Yeah,
I think I remember hearing about that. Yeah.
All there's no new cars there.
Yeah.
It's all from the 50s, and they got to keep them running because of the embargo.
Yeah.
You can't take anything to them.
yeah. Unfortunately, there's the leftist movements that really kind of got their inspiration from, in the 70s with the Soviet Union. I was reading an article just about what Venezuela, how much wealth was there. The same you can talk about with Argentina. In the early 1900s, Venezuela was like a thriving, rich area. It really was. And then unfortunately, these leftists take
Venezuela
over.
was the #1 South American country.
It's
period.
just crazy.
It was if you read what they were doing and capable in oil production, they were the #1. And within 10 years of going socialist, now they're the bottom of the barrel. Bay of Pigs was 1961, and the Cuban Missile Crisis was in 62.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when Russia saw what America tried to do, that's when the Cold War really kind of
ramped
erupted.
up. Okay.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah, they said right now, they said in Mexico, they say government reports say homicide rates have dropped in recent years down to about 17.5 per 100,000 people in 2025. That's according to the Los Angeles Times article. But the reality is it's pretty bad.
The reality is we're never going to know what they really,
They say over the last decade alone, more than 300,000 people have been murdered in Mexico.
Wow.
And that's according to an article called Vision of Humanity. And he said that violence isn't random. It's structured, organized, and increasingly industrial. To say experts estimate 2/3 of that 300,000 are tied directly to organized crime.
Wow.
Driven by cartel activity, and that's according to the Human Rights Watch. So,
well, a lot of people think they don't realize that the cartels, they're not random thugs. They're integrated criminal businesses with armies.
oh yeah,
When you look at what happened over the last couple of weeks, they were taking out a lot. They weren't playing.
Yeah.
This is business for them. This is multi-billion-dollar businesses that are run by a couple of cartels that, you get on their bad side or don't do what they want, and they are just going to take you out.
yeah. They said.
Because what's the government going to do? How are they going to arrest you?
Yeah,
or
a lot of
anything?
them are owned by. Recent research suggests around 175,000 people are actively working inside cartel networks.
Wow.
Making them one of the largest employers in the country. And that's according to Nature, an article. They said, let that sink in.
Yeah.
Organized crime at that scale doesn't just survive; it actually governs.
Yeah,
and that's
of
what the
course.
problem is. It's just what it is. At its peak, Mexico saw over 32,000 murders in a single year.
Gosh.
32,000.
Yeah.
We freak out around here when it's a few hundred. Can you imagine 32,000
32,000 in a year?
in a single year? They said in some
That's an
regions,
average of how many
Yeah,
a
I'm
day?
about to do it. I'm
they
about to pull my
said
calculator
it
out.
said in some regions homicide rates have exceeded 100 deaths per 100,000 people. That's comparable to active war zones.
Gosh.
Well, it is an active war zone. It is actually an active war zone.
That would average out to about 87 or about 88 deaths a day.
Yeah, a day. Can you imagine
Almost 100 people dying a day. That's
just
crazy.
getting murdered?
Yeah.
I mean,
Sounds like Chicago.
That's crazy.
I'd be very curious what there is, how much they.
Well,
how many people are getting killed a day.
I read an article about it, and I took this quote from it. Drugs go north, guns go south, money goes both ways, and bodies stack up on both sides.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Holy,
wow.
that's crazy.
Well, we have the demand part of it. They're just the supply part of it. So America does have some blame in this, but okay, how about we shut the border down? But then, where they have a 2,000-mile border with us, how many of those miles they're putting ships in the middle of the night? They got submarines now. They got, you name it. They got drones now. Did you see the drone thing where they're flying the drones over the wall that is there?
Oh yeah, they've gotten very sophisticated. Mm-hmm. When you have billions of dollars, you generally can probably get your hands on some.
They found
interesting toys.
2 stealth type submarines.
Crazy.
Yeah, and then now we haven't even touched on the digging, the tunnels.
The tunnel networks.
Yeah,
that's the problem with building. Even though I'm a firm believer that we need to have, I believe we should have a dang actual concrete wall 30 feet high running across the entire border with guard parapets on top, sort of like Hadrian's Wall that the Romans built in northern England.
Well, everybody keeps talking about, the next wars are going to be in the Middle East. What's in the Middle East? Sand.
Yep.
What's on the Mexican-U.S. border? Sand. How about we put a couple army bases out there and just let them train and protect the border at the same time? Every other civilized country in the world, what is their border protected by? The military. Because only in America, if you come here illegally, do you get free room and board, health care, cell phones, everything. Everywhere else, you get killed or go to jail for crossing illegally.
Unfortunately, our business community pressures our lawmakers to not be so worried about the border. I hate to say it, but the reality is if there was political will to close the border, which Trump has done a great job of shutting stuff down, but the problem is it needs to be consistent year in, administration after administration after administration, and unfortunately it's not. So you have time periods where it's really watched, and then other time periods where they just kind of let them do whatever. But yes, I'm a firm believer that they need to build an actual really wall.
No, I agree.
And actually put our military actually on the border. But, you talk about our military generals are sitting there going, oh, we ain't doing all that.
Yeah.
They've been bought and paid for too.
Yep.
So
they're part of the military industrial complex.
They're part of all that crap that we all heard about. So I'm very aggravated right now. I don't want to get too negative, but it's just there just seems to be no political will to do the right thing when it comes to this. And I'm glad Trump is actually putting some pressure on Mexico. China sits there and they kind of wipe their hands, but they're supplying the cartels with the precursors for fentanyl. Yeah. So that's the problem. They say, well, we're not making fentanyl, but you're shipping the precursors into Mexico and they're making them there. And then and they're doing that on purpose because they know it destabilizes America. That's the problem. But at the same time, I would have to, just like I mentioned in my opening, it's we have to look at ourselves and this desire for drugs in this country, and I don't understand the idea that people cannot live life without being stoned out of their mind all the time. Yeah. I don't understand that at all. That's not the way you're meant to live. I get it that people are sick and maybe they need certain drugs to help them. In certain circumstances, I can go for that. But to sit there and just simply say, legalize drugs and do all this stuff. And I'm sitting there going, let's just make more people stoned and completely out of their mind. Like we just need to add more to the problem. It's to me, there's something going on in our culture that we just can't seem to just get over this this idea of this kind of self-absorption.
Yeah.
That well, that's just what I want to do. It makes me feel good. Well, why can't you feel good without drugs?
Yeah,
What's going on in your life that you can't feel good? It's not the way you were made to be.
Yeah.
Is to be loaded up on drugs all the time. But it's just, we just got these things that are, we got problems. And that's what I'm saying. That's the challenge when it comes to this issue with Mexico and fentanyl and cocaine and heroin and all the other stuff that we battle all the time. And it just, I've seen what drugs can do to people, and I have no love for them at all. I truly don't. I hate even taking an aspirin.
Yeah.
And it's just like, come on. I mean, think of yourself better than that.
Right. I think also some of that's probably a slippery slope of things where it's like some of it I know people don't intentionally take because of like they're laced into other things, but sometimes,
well, I was just fixing to get into that.
So it all just depends.
The top 5 drugs coming from Mexico and their yearly flow and street value, I got on a list for us. Number 5 is marijuana.
Yeah.
Can you believe that's still on there? Yeah. Because the U.S. legalization crushed the cartel dominance of weed. Now, there's still some coming up to the non-legal states, and it's about 1,000 metric tons a year, which equals in street value of $3 to $8 billion annually. Okay, anybody care to guess what number 4 is?
Besides marijuana?
So, yeah, it's marijuana is 5. What's number 4?
Oh, good Lord.
I still think fentanyl. Or is
heroin is number 4.
Oh, okay. I didn't think about that.
Think about this. 5 to 10 metric tons with a street value of $5 billion to $10 billion annually. But the heroin is kind of coming down because it's being replaced by fentanyl.
Which is 3?
Nope.
Ah, dang. Okay.
Good try.
Is it cocaine?
Cocaine is number 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cocaine is number 3.
Yeah.
And that's 200. And think about this. This is 250 to 350 metric tons via Mexico.
That's crazy.
Every year. And that's $25 to $40 billion annually. And, that's mostly being kind of produced in Colombia and stuff like that, but it's being trafficked through Mexico. Number 2. Who wants to take a stab at that one?
What you mean number 2?
This is a top 10, top 5 list.
Okay.
What would be next, do you think? What would be number 2?
I don't know what would be left. I mean, we've talked about heroin, coke.
Methamphetamine.
Methamphetamine, yes.
Yeah. I guess that's leading us to what number 1 might be. Yeah. Methamphetamine is kind of a workhorse drug. It's not talked about as much, but it's still a massive. And it's 150 to 300 metric tons, 20 to 40 billion annually. And this is still primarily produced in Mexico now. And it's become, they've gotten it to where it's a higher purity than ever.
Which is bad.
Yes, it's absolutely bad. And number 1, the king right now, I guess we could call it, is fentanyl. And that's, what is it, like 2 or 3 little grains of it is enough to kill you.
Yeah. And when I tell you, it's like a grain of sand.
Yes.
And I think it's like 15 of those grains of sand. I mean, it doesn't take much because, like in a medical procedure, they use a very small amount.
Yeah. I think they use cc's or micrograms for what they would use for.
There's 10 to 20 metric tons coming into America annually. Dang. That's 30 to 60 billion dollars annually of fentanyl. And it's very cheap to make. When you're getting all the and China's not charging a whole bunch for the stuff to give to Mexico because they know they're trying to destroy America from within. So it's not plant-based. It's all chemical-based. And, it's apparently it's really easy to smuggle because you can put it in regular stuff and the dogs really don't know it's there and make it look and smell like something else. Remember, they used to put the cocaine in coffee so the dogs couldn't smell it.
Right.
So, but that's something. Fentanyl is number one now coming out of Mexico, and that's when you said earlier.
It is,
and that's why I figured this would be a good time to say this, because fentanyl is the king now, and I think that's when Donald Trump said enough is enough.
It is the most powerful drug out there right now. It is truly it's a tragedy right now of what's going on with that, because I've seen it play out on the streets and what it does to people, and it's just terrible. I'm reading an article here by the New York Post. Mexico has quietly shipped nearly 100 suspected cartel drug traffickers to the United States to stand trial. After President Trump branded the groups foreign terrorist organizations last year and pressured the Mexican government to cooperate. The suspects include the brother of Nemesio El Mincho. It's a name I really can't pronounce. And it's part of the brutal Jalisco New Generation cartel. His leader, who was killed by the Mexican army on Sunday. I remember reading about this in the news. The Justice Department said many of the 92 defendants released to the Americans had U.S. extradition requests that were not honored during the Biden administration.
Mm-hmm.
So, as President Trump has made clear, cartels are terrorist groups, and the Department of Justice is devoted to destroying cartels and transnational gangs, Attorney General Pam Bondi said. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
I think one of the things that's really important to remember is that Mexico is not our enemy.
Right.
They are a major, major partner for America. But there are areas in Mexico that are just under severe organized crime pressure, and that the cartels are just feeding death. That's all they care about. We talked about the deaths in Mexico. You know, what was it? 300,000 something people. I tell you what, if that happened anywhere else in the world, there would be an outcry. You know, why aren't we screaming about that?
Yeah.
And, you know, America can't just fix this by slogans. Mexico just can't keep screaming sovereignty. They're going to have to truly work together to resolve this, because they are a partner. They are a major partner.
Yeah, well, unfortunately.
And they invented tamales. I mean, come on.
I've always said if that country could ever get its act together and suppress the criminal activity to at least tolerable levels,
right,
where you could have a thriving tourist industry where people feel safe and can go about their business and actually really develop that country. I've always said that Mexico could truly become a jewel. Mm-hmm. I have a feeling if the stuff in Cuba goes the way I think President Trump wants it to go, and it collapses, and that country opens back up, I think it's going to take away from Mexico, because people are going to start going to Cuba for vacation. That's what I'm a firm believer that I truly believe that there is a lot of potential there that's just being lost. And then of course any president that gets elected there that has tried to do anything, they get murdered. Yeah, or their family members get murdered.
Which is great. It's so unfortunate.
You know, so it's almost next to impossible. So when you got the president of Mexico that it's just basically defending them, you know exactly what's going on. I mean, she ain't going to do anything that's what they
get her killed.
They're going to get her killed or her family killed. So I mean, it's a sad deal. And it's just unfortunate that at one time it wasn't like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it really wasn't. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I mean, these are, you think they're very hardworking people and, generally very conservative and they're very religious. And
I think it really started with cocaine coming from Colombia, and it just became this highway to America that just kind of grew and grew and grew into something else, because in the 70s, you smoked a little weed, you did a little bit of heroin, and, some weed did come from Mexico and stuff. The heroin came from somewhere else, but it was really just the highway. But it's no longer just the highway. They're producing the stuff to kill Americans. That's a problem.
And it's by design.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
That's what I'm saying. I think they're working in concert with the Chinese government, and I think that's where the game has changed. And I think finally Trump you finally got a president that is actually looking at our hemisphere, going, I need to start closing these doors that have been used to unfortunately harm our citizens. And that's what this is. This is a door that's been wide open because it's the political will to do what is needed to do it. So, and as I said, they could close the border easy if they wanted to. They could put the military on the border and it would come to a screeching halt.
Yeah.
But I kind of wish that these countries would actually be nice countries where people didn't feel like they needed to leave their country and come to the United States.
Well, you got to remember, America's the only country in the world that people hate and don't want to leave.
That's true. Well, it's so funny that they can sit there and criticize it and hate it and do everything they want, and nothing really happens to them.
Right.
So that just tells you exactly that you've got it pretty good here.
Right.
Which I don't understand that, but there was a change in the immigration rules, and I believe in 1965 that changed the preference of immigration from, in essence, white Europeans, to more brown and black colored immigrants. So there was a change. There were a lot of criticisms of America's immigration stance prior to this. A lot of people thought it was racist, that we favored preferably Northern Europeans, so Germans, Switzerland, French, those kind of English immigrants versus you didn't want Mexicans and Africans. And
well, the big change
like
was the Puerto Ricans.
Yeah.
That was the first group that kind of went from like you said, the Europeans. Then I guess it was the late 60s, maybe 70s when the Puerto Ricans started coming. And then it just kind of kept progressing from there. But, I can remember in the 70s, the joke, I got a knife, because the Puerto Ricans carried knives.
Yeah.
They always had a knife. That was the joke. I got a knife. And it just, that's about when I can remember that change happened. It started with the Puerto Ricans and then just.
Yeah, there was it was under Lyndon Johnson that the America changed its, and you can probably look it up, immigration change, 1965, Lyndon Johnson signed the law. But that changed the type of immigrants that this country started to really take.
But that was also maybe because of the Cubans coming up too. Because that's when they started leaving Cuba. That's when the revolution, the revolution was happening, and the Cubans started, and that's when, what was it, wet foot, dry foot, and all this stuff started happening.
Well, there's probably a lot of different reasons, but I would think probably what was going on was, I would think that might be part of what was driving that. But as I said, I think for, after World War II, there were talks in the increasing about criticizing America's, basically only wanting white Europeans for the most part. Not that they excluded everybody, but then you had Vietnam, and you had Asians. I remember as a child, my family adopted a family that came from Vietnam. I still remember seeing all the pictures of we'd go and visit. I played with those children. I often wonder what happened to them. I think they all moved to California, if I'm not mistaken.
It says October of 1965 at the base of the Statue of Liberty. President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Immigration and Nationality Act, also known as the Hart-Celler Act. And it says that the Immigration and Nationality Act abolished quotas, opening the doors to those, to quote, those who can contribute most to the country, to its growth, to its strength, to its spirit, end quote. The new law created a preference system that focused on immigrants' skills and family relations with citizens or U.S. residents. Instead of
so they were saying, don't come here and have your hand out. Come here and do something.
Yeah.
Well, there must have been another law change somewhere because, how many millions and millions of immigrants now are on government subsidy, which is actually illegal according to the Constitution. The Constitution states that any handouts from the government are for U.S. citizens and U.S. citizens only.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of what the criticism I saw of the Somalis that were imported here, and then like 10 years later, they're still, the vast majority are still on public assistance, which is not what, I think of when my ancestors on my mother's side immigrated here in the early 1900s. They had nothing. I mean, it just, to me, the idea of what they had to do to basically, go grab a piece of land and farm that land, and how they raise their children to, you speak American now. We're Americans. We're not this. We're not that anymore. I came here to be an American, and that meant speaking English. That meant adopting the customs of the United States. It wasn't to import my own. Not that you completely did away with your heritage, but it was the overall that I wanted to be an American. And now a lot of these immigrants, they hate the country. They're sending all their money back. There's no assimilation. There's none of that going on because the nature of immigration has changed. It's now for political purposes. They're just importing these vast majority of people in that's not the way immigration really works. You let people in, and gradually they kind of assimilate into the larger society. Then you open it up again, and then it's kind of a controlled flow.
That's right.
Instead
we
of
haven't had a controlled flow in a long time.
And
but you have to think about like the mentality of like the Somalis too. Where did they come from? They came from Somalia.
Somalia.
Okay. So, and this is what's problem, especially with like the white liberal women with this moral, vein in them that says all this bullshit that comes out of their mouth. But when a person comes from Somalia and gets on government assistance in their country, those dollar amounts are considered wealthy. They have no reason to go any further. They have no drive. Oh, I'm getting this free money. I don't need any more because I would be considered wealthy in my country. And what they don't need, because they box people together and then they ship their money back and to their own country. That's what Mexicans are doing. They work and ship their money back to Mexico because where they came from is true poverty, true living on the street, no electricity. No,
that's what I'm
saying. It's just,
that's what I'm saying. The difference is these previous groups that came here, I'm here. I've left that behind.
Right.
I'm going to become an American. And that's not what's happening now. And unfortunately, it's all it is increased balkanization, which ultimately is disruptive to a society. A society can't operate if not you have to kind of have everybody for the most part on the same page with the basics. If you're not doing that, then, basically everything comes to a grinding halt. So, I mean, and you have the dysfunction that happens now. So, we'll see. But I do know that, part of this now, this support of Mexico trying to bring all these cartel members in, extradite them to the United States, has to do with Trump's threat of tariffs. Because 80% of Mexico's exports go to the United States. Any tariffs like that will send them into recession and completely destroy their economy. Right. So they've been basically, kind of winning 1 month of reprieves from these tariffs by doing what they're doing. But believe me, this is the only way you're going to get Mexico right now. Until that country gets free of that cartel influence, it's the only way you're going to get them to do anything right now. So, I mean, it's just we're just in a bad spot right now, and we'll be very curious if it once Trump leaves the White House and whoever the next president is, will it continue? That to me is crucial, and a lot will be determined with these at the midterms of what's going to happen. With that, everybody's right now predicting the Democrats to win the House, and if that's the case, they're going to investigate Trump. They're going to try to impeach him, and you go right back to the same old stuff over and over again. I mean, it's just unbelievable what that party has turned into, and to me the idea when during the State of the Union when Trump basically said, everybody stand up that you believe that. Talk about the perfect setup.
The perfect setup.
Said that the number one job of government is to look out for the American citizen, and only the Republicans and Democrats sat down doing. How does that look?
It looks so bad.
That you don't think your number one job is to take care of the American citizen first, and then if we have things left over, we'll look at these other things. I mean, to me, that just shows you just
where I remember seeing that. And I was like, that's hard to.
It was a trap.
Yeah, well, it was a perfect trap because I mean, I don't know. Even if you're a liberal, I feel like you'd still would feel like it's, I don't know, but I guess they're so far ingrained in what they're doing that.
Well, it's
here, the forest for the trees.
Yeah, talking about the U.S. role in this problem says 80% of cartel weapons originate from the United States, according to Mexican officials.
Yeah, but they use mostly AK-47s.
Well, that's the number one.
Okay,
the most plentiful rifle.
How many AK-47s do we make in America?
Zero.
Okay. How many does China make?
Tons.
Yep. How many does Russia make?
Tons.
Yep.
How many does Venezuela make at one time?
Well, I think they probably got all those shipments came in during the time when they were communists.
Mm-hmm.
So
so you can say that all you want, and I know that some of them do, because they've caught a lot of trucks going down to Mexico with arms in them, but they still primarily use the AK-47. Well, what does that say?
Well, that's the number one used rifle, battlefield rifle.
Yeah, but it don't come from America either, does it?
No, it doesn't. But
that's kind of my point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's.
They say that to try to put more blame on America. The biggest blame America has is the demand part of this.
That's the problem: is Americans wanting drugs, and that goes back to what I was saying earlier. So
that's crazy.
I don't know what the. I said, I don't know what the fix is. I really don't. We've got an issue, and we have to be honest with ourselves that we as a population have to think. We have to think higher, and that just, to me, that goes back to where we're at right now. I should think we're very apathetic, dystopic mindset that we're kind of numb. I think there's really nothing making us great anymore. There's no aspirations for higher things, and I don't know how you get out of that. I mean, maybe just we are where we're at. Now Trump is thinking, right now with long term here with trying to access Greenland and get Cuba, Venezuela, and I think he's playing geopolitical chess right now. The media is going nuts, and of course now we've got Iran, and people are freaking out right now over Iran, and there's been some service people that have been killed. That's a tragedy. Of course, if one person dies, it's too much. But unfortunately, Iran has been a problem for us, for the region, for umpteen million years now.
Yeah.
After the Ayatollah took over, they have been the number one exporter of terrorism in the world. And that's according to the United Nations. That's not even an American thing. I mean, that's a UN statistic. So
well, on top of that, they're the largest counterfeiter of U.S. dollars in the world.
They are a terrible regime. But, they're all, to me, they're all in bed. They don't trust me. The cartels are working with them, too. You don't have to tell me. I mean, it's, back when Biden was president, the border was wide open. People were coming across the border that were not Mexican.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's where all the terrorists are coming, is from Mexico.
Yeah, I mean, they've talked about their sleeper cells all over the United States. And that wouldn't surprise me. That's because we've just been, our elected leaders are playing politics instead of actually looking out for the people that they're supposed to watch out for, and they're just not.
Yep, that's crazy.
Did I mention that Mexico had over 124,000 missing people?
Not yet, but I knew it was up there. I didn't realize it was that high.
By March of 2025. According to Reuters.
Cicero said this about Rome. I want to throw this at y'all.
Okay.
The budget should be balanced. The treasury should be refilled. Public debt should be reduced. The arrogance of officialdom should be tempered and controlled. And the assistance to foreign lands should be curtailed, lest Rome become bankrupt. People must again... Okay, I love the word again because they started off like America, learn to work instead of living on public assistance.
There you go.
So even somebody saw it way back then.
Yeah.
Because that's what happened to Rome. They overextended. They started doing all of this, started bringing all these people in,
Yep.
And they stopped working, and they're like, well, you need to feed us now.
Right.
And then... how fast did Rome fall?
Oh, yeah.
That's an interesting. I listened to a podcast regarding what if Rome did not fall?
Yeah.
How that would have or if Rome would have not had the disaster, the Varian disaster in the Teutoburg Forest, where 4 legions were annihilated because of treachery. If that would have never happened, if Varus would have actually listened to someone else, and saying, "Look, they're leading you into a trap." If how that would have if Rome would have conquered Greater Germania at the time, how that would have changed Rome's fortunes. It's interesting.
I heard a podcast that says the Roman Empire did not fall. It just changed its name to the Vatican. And the Roman Empire is actually, the emperor is the Pope.
Well, I would say there is some, you could say to some, maybe, for lack of a better term, maybe a skeleton of the cultural backdrop. I would say you could say yes, because the church did fill a vacuum.
Yeah.
Not by design. I've read a ton of books on this stuff, and I really, because one of the things I'm very interested in. But a lot of people kind of discount what was really going on in what would now be Western Europe during the late 3rd, 4th, and 5th century, and as the Roman Empire as a political entity was in essence getting overrun by barbarian hordes, and the political was just breaking apart. What stayed behind, what lasted, it was the church that had evolved, that kind of looked kind of like the civil government did. It kind of exercised. So it was very easy for the people at the time just to kind of cling to that, because that's what they knew. That was their world. It's kind of hard for us today to kind of imagine that, but I kind of tell people, I said, think of the United States if it was getting overrun.
Yeah.
It is getting overrun.
Well, but getting overrun and actually losing its identity, losing its civil government.
We are losing our identity. We are exactly the Roman Empire at one time when the wokeism of the Roman Empire started happening.
I think he's talking about something more direct.
No. But it's still the basics of what's happening. America has lost its identity. We've lost our purpose. And it is two things that happen at the same time. Rampant deviance. Because look at the Roman Empire. That's when homosexuality became rampant, and all of this sexual deviance started happening. Right. And they had the blood sport.
Right.
Okay. And I've said for years, when two things happen at the same time, the civilization is doomed. The two things are rampant deviance and blood sport. So obviously in America with this rampant deviance, and you've got the Hollywood and the politicians killing and having sex with children and trafficking babies, et cetera, we know we have the rampant deviance. Right. What's the blood sport today? Look at our movies, look at our games, look at the blood in the streets. So the same two things are happening, and when those two things happen, then all of a sudden you have all these people with their hands out. When you have hands out expecting something, it's the Roman Empire all over again, different name, same thing happening.
Yeah, but the eastern part didn't suffer the effects that the West did. Now, kind of going off into Roman history, I mean, the western part of the empire was actually the poorer part of Rome. Most of the wealth, what I would call the classical literature, kind of the centers of civilization, were actually in the east. So anything around, which would be Turkey, Palestine, Syria, all those areas, kind of Egypt, that's where all the learning was at the time. So unfortunately, when Rome lost the grain growing areas of North Africa to the Vandals, that really kind of sent the empire on the western side in a death spiral. But that's kind of getting off topic. I'd love to
make for a good show coming up.
An interesting deal. But yes, I've heard of the term that the Roman Empire in a way, to a degree, lives in the Roman Catholic or the Catholic Church.
Right.
The same could be said about the British Empire.
What?
The British Empire transformed into a bank. And so,
and everything that Donald Trump is doing right now has removed that bank, and there's another key word to that, insurance system.
Right, Lloyd's of London, yeah.
So where he has hit them directly with this Venezuela, this Iran thing, and the Strait of, how you say it, Hormuz. Okay, he's hitting that banking industry hard.
Yeah, I think he had said he was going to get some investors or some sort of insurance from the United States for these ships to be willing. Of course, there's some issues with that. There's still some ships that are reluctant to go through because they don't want to get hit by rockets, and which I don't blame them. I can understand it. But so it's but yeah, it says right now just what's going on in the United States here. It says CDC said there are about 105,000 overdose deaths in 2023. While the newest provisional national data predicts 71,000 drug overdose deaths for the 12 months ending in October of 2025.
That's crazy. That was in a year?
In a year. So that tells you
crazy.
That's because they've cut the flow of that
they've
drugs.
Cut the flow, and I think it was higher during the COVID pandemic, too. I think drugs and alcohol went up during the pandemic, and I think that's starting to come back down a little bit, but also with cutting, stopping some of the drugs and things like that, too.
I was making a comment about the fact that it's crazy that in Mexico we talked about 32,000 people get killed by homicide every year, and this is 100,000 for overdoses, which is it's crazy how.
Yeah,
it seems like there's no value on human life anymore.
This is ATF says its Mexico trace data is intended to support law enforcement investigations, and the DOJ reported in January of 2025 that 82% of traced Mexico crime guns were recovered in states dominated by the Sinaloa and or Jalisco New Generation cartels. The GAO also noted Mexico's estimate that 200,000 firearms are smuggled from the United States each year. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of guns.
Yes.
Because, America's a gun country, and we make a lot of guns. And it's just, whatever they use. But I do know right now that the United States is utilizing drones. I think they're feeding data to the Mexican military to trace down where the drug cartels are. And believe me, these cartels are not going to go down lightly. There's too much money involved. So you saw the violence that broke out. They shut things down because, it's one thing when you just mess with their margins.
Oh, yeah.
Another thing when you basically are really cutting into their supply lines, and they're not going to give up that money. That's why these things have got to be, just to be honest with you, they really need to be put down like rabid dogs.
There's two ways to kind of look at that. And what was it? A year and some change ago, Miranda and I went on something for our honeymoon because we hadn't been able to do it in so long. We went to Roatan, which is Honduras, which is a socialistic government. But they leave the island of Roatan alone because they know that's all the tourist money.
Yeah.
The government, the bad people in Honduras leave that alone. Why would the cartels? That's where the money comes in. The tourists, what did you hear a couple of weeks ago? They closed Cozumel, but there's another one, Costa Maya, something like it. Sorry, I got brain damage, guys. Cut me some slack. But they closed 3 or 4 of these major ports down for the cruise ships. How many millions of dollars goes through there every week with all these ports? And they're going to close it down? Use your brain.
Yeah.
Don't mess with your money.
Yeah. Don't bite the hand that feeds you.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. They learned that in Honduras, apparently.
Yeah.
Well, it's fortunate they're lashing out because the government now is kind of putting screws to them, and the government's only doing that because Trump has pushed that. Because trust me, Biden didn't do anything at all. So that's what I'm saying. This has got to be a consistent pressure on them to check these cartels, and it's not going to be pretty. I mean, these people are not going to go down. They're going to go down they're going to fight to the death because be honest with you, they don't have no money outside of selling drugs. I mean, for them, it's not like going to a job. I mean, they don't operate that way, and it's a very poor country. And so if you're poor and don't have nothing, and you finally do have something, you cling to it like a dog into a bone. I'm not letting the bone go because I know what it is not to have the bone. So these people are clinging to this, and they're taking advantage of these people, and they'll do whatever they have to do to push these. And they say, hey, well, that's what the Americans want. They want the drug. So there's a market there, and we all know supply and demand, kind of fundamentals of kind of economics. If there's a market, somebody's going to provide it. Yeah. If there's no market, there's no money in it, well, probably it'll dry up, because then it's like, what's the point in doing it? I could care less. But they've got major issues right now. So, but Trump is
he's putting pressure on a lot of places on our hemisphere. Yeah. And you can see what he's doing sometimes. Sometimes you really can't, but sometimes you can see exactly what he's doing. With the Venezuela and Iran thing is a direct smack on China.
Yeah.
And the British banking system, which we've had the thumb on us for a really, really long time.
That's part of the reason why I think a lot of people don't like Trump. I just think he ain't part of the club, and he's just, when you ain't part of the club, you ain't playing nice, and you're not going along with everybody, and everybody's making their money, and what are you doing? Why are you messing up the boat? The whole setup that we got going here, and anybody that does that is going to be a target. And so, but I give Trump credit; he is pushing Mexico to try to fix some of this problem. And I'll be honest with you, I think that the fentanyl issue and the damage it's done to this country has been enormous. And I think if China is importing precursors into Mexico and the cartels, to me, this is where I think the emphasis should be. I don't care what you do with your cocaine. I don't care what you do. But fentanyl, if you're taking anything from the Chinese, we're coming down, dropping the hammer on you.
Yeah.
We'll just kind of turn the other way regarding the other thing, and
we're not going to turn the other way. We're not going to turn the other way, but play the game.
Be there.
It's kind of like speeding.
Right.
Okay. If you're going to speed and you get caught, okay, you get caught. Well, the same thing with the pot and the cocaine and everything else.
Right.
We'll just keep playing that game.
There's not going to be a complete focus on that. It's just going to be, we'll kind of do like we've always done, but you got to cut this out.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I think if you can, you'll never get rid of drugs.
No.
You'll never get, because there's people always going to want drugs. But I think if you can cut the fentanyl out, because now the fentanyl is showing up in dope, it's showing up in weed. Yeah. It's people are buying one drug and it's laced in. So it's because they're using it as a filler.
Yeah.
And so it's unfortunately, I think I'm buying some marijuana, all of a sudden.
Well, it's also addictive. They're using it to addict you to it.
Exactly, because it's destructive. So
it's a different high.
I think that's where I think this goes back to this larger war against China. And I think ultimately the arrows always point back at China. And I've said this, they are the enemy number one. Yeah. They just are. And they have said what they want to do. They want to become the globe's most powerful country. That is their desire. Mm-hmm. And that means supplanting the United States. And I'm telling you, you don't want the world with China being your most powerful country.
That's why they want to destroy America from within, and fentanyl seems to be an easy, cheap way to do it.
Well,
it's better than building a military twice as big as you need.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, we're just, to me, the border, the military be on the border.
Oh,
in a perfect
world. 2 or 3 military bases down there, let Army on 2 sides, the Navy and Coast Guard on the coast, and have the Marines in the middle, and just let them figure it out.
Have a border, have it patrolled by drones, helicopters, have a big
and guard towers.
And guard towers, and control what comes in. Now, people that are coming and trying to dig in holes, well, you can do ground penetrating radar and pick that up. And you would have that running along the wall. So you would automatically detect, okay, somebody's trying to undermine or go underneath. And
we don't need that. Well, Mexico has a wall down at their bottom.
Well, every country cares about their borders. But unfortunately for us, because of this over-dependence on illegal labor, because Americans don't want to work dirty jobs. You can also say that the declining birth rate is starting to have an effect. Not as many people are having children. We've kind of talked about this before. I just think there's some warning signs there. But yeah, we are a country and are addicted to cheap labor and cheap things, and we've kind of lost the spirit that at one time motivated people in this country, and somewhere we got off the tracks, and we have to get back on.
Definitely need to get back on it.
Well, if you have any responses to that, I'm pretty sure we have either delighted or offended somebody.
Right?
Somebody out there. We have an email.
We ought to have a catchy email for that.
Yeah, I think we do. It's called getoffendedtogether@gmail.com. Or you can leave comments on Spotify or on YouTube if you have a little bit of a short form response. Be sure to like and subscribe on whatever platform you listen to us on. We really appreciate it. And share it with somebody that you think would be interested in this or maybe has a strong opinion about this. And until next week, thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.
Goodbye, everyone, and God bless.
I apologize. I don't have a closing for the podcast episode we did today, but I have something else for you if you'll indulge me. There's a truth that I didn't learn in a book. I actually had to learn it the hard way. the lighthouse principle. Nobody really teaches it like this, but think about it. A lighthouse does not chase ships. It doesn't panic. It doesn't move. It simply stands where it was built to stand and shine. And here's the part that hit me kind of square in the chest. The ships that need direction will find it, and the ones that don't will wreck somewhere else. For a long time, I wasn't a lighthouse. I tried to be the rescue boat. I chased people in storms they kept choosing to be in. I explained myself to people who already decided not to understand me. I overgave. I overextended. I overproved, just trying to earn my place in their lives. And I told myself that this was love, that it was loyalty, that it was just being a good man. But the truth is, I was abandoning my post. There's also another truth that nobody talks about. The more available you make yourself to people who aren't anchored like you, the more they confuse access with value. They don't love the light. They love the convenience. When I finally stopped chasing, when I stopped overextending, when I planted my feet and stood firm in who I was becoming, something uncomfortable happened. People drifted. At first, I felt like it was loss, like it was rejection, like I had done something wrong. But then it really hit me. They weren't rejecting me. They were revealing themselves. They had never come for me. They came for the rescue. And the moment I stopped rescuing, the truth walked in. You don't lose people when you grow. You lose the roles. You lose the fixer, the savior, the emotional supplier. And then the roles fall away. All that's left is real. That's when life gets quieter, cleaner, stronger, and more aligned. Because the right people don't need you to be exhausted to stay. They don't need you overgiving to feel close. They don't need you shrinking to feel secure. They're drawn to who you are, not what you provide. So if you're in a season where people are drifting, where it feels a little lonely, like you're wondering if choosing yourself was worth it, hear this clearly. You're not losing your way. You're finally standing in it. Stop chasing ships. Be the lighthouse. The ones that are meant to find you will. Thanks for hanging out with us today. You're the best. Peace.